Hello, good morning. Welcome to It's Morning Somewhere, weekly show brought to you by Flight Attendant Career Connection and me, Abby Unger. I'm going to change my angle a little bit. I feel like our weekly show brought to you by Flight Attendant Career Connection and me, Abby Unger. Oh, I have my. I'm going to change my angle a little bit. I feel. Whoa. Oh my gosh, unprofessional start to the morning. Sorry, I had the live on another browser. I had this video and it started playing. So I apologize if that sounded like horrible feedback. And then for some reason, my angle, it's all about the angles, right? Have y'all seen that TikTok? It's like, from this angle, you look like a bag of biscuits. But from this angle, it's another. So when you're doing your video interview, make sure that you're working out your angles before you start, but it is definitely important that you are looking at your angles. You really want the camera to be about eye level or a little higher. That's really the most flattering angle. And y'all were a little bit low. It was just a little weird going on. So good morning. It's probably not morning for you, honestly, because it is noon on the west coast of the U.S. and it is 3 p.m. on the east coast of the United States. But guess where it's morning? Here in Hawaii. It's morning somewhere. So welcome to the morning show brought to you by Flight Attendant Career Connection, which I already said. Today's show is going to be not as positive as what I normally bring you. And I'm just going to go ahead and start that off. So if you've been following me for a while, you know that it's very important to me to always be truthful, but I tend to look at the bright side. I am definitely an optimist. I am a person who is hopeful. I believe that hope is very, very powerful. And it's something that is almost a habit to be hopeful and to be optimistic, that these are habits. My personality is driven that way. So I definitely have been accused in the past of being too positive or too encouraging or too optimistic. I've actually been accused of being untruthful in the spirit of being optimistic, which I do not think is a fair assessment, because I have always been honest. Although I do look at the bright side. That's the truth. I'm going to, though, today, I'm hoping that you leave with hope, but today's show is not going to be as rainbows and jazz hands as it normally is. And that's because today is May 13th, 2020. We are now just about a good 2 months into shelter in place, quarantine, travel being suspended. It was the 14th of March that the cruise industry shut down. So we're about 2 months into this now. And every day we're getting new information. Every day things are changing. But every day that this lasts is like another punch to the hospitality industry. It's another hit to aviation. The longer that it lasts is going to, every day that this lasts is going to sort of compound the amount of time that it takes to recover, the industry to recover, hospitality to recover, the economy to recover. That's just like the facts. And I'm not an economist or anything like that. And I'm not an analyst in any sense, but we have even seen over the last week. So we talked last week on Wednesday. I had a live stream. We shot the first episode of It's Morning Somewhere. Today's the second episode. And so even in this last week, things have changed. Last week, and before this week that we just went through, I definitely would have answered you if you said, I got a job offer. What am I going to do? What are they going to do? I would have said, let's hang in there. Let's see what they're going to do. It depends on how long this lasts. There's definitely the chance that they're going to do training in fall or winter or even first quarter next year. And if that's the case, they may just keep you in the pool. As long as you're in the hiring pool, you're good. Like, we're just going to have to see. But then this week, we did have some hiring pools emptied. They drained a couple of the hiring pools. Going to be talking about today. First of all, I did go over who's hiring. It appears that currently Mesa Airlines is still accepting applications, and Breeze Airways is still accepting applications. Breeze is a startup airline that has not started yet. It was scheduled to start late this year. I have a feeling that will not happen, but they are accepting applications. So go ahead and fill out the application if they interest you. Breeze Airways is being started by one of the gentlemen who was a founder of JetBlue Airways. And then we have Mesa Airlines. They are still hiring as well. They're accepting applications, and they are actually even interviewing. So they're sending out video interviews. I don't know what they're doing with the video interviews. I said that out loud to my husband, and he said, well, they're watching them. Well, okay, they're probably watching the video interviews, but I'm not sure when they're going to have their next training class or where they're going to be. But I said this last week, and I even got another, someone else posted in the Facebook group, I think today, I got an email to do a video interview. This was with PSA though. Should I do it? Should I waste my time? It is never a waste of time to complete an interview. It's never a waste of time to complete an interview. You will learn how to get your angles better every time, get a little better on the angles. You're going to get to, again, reaffirm why you want to be a flight attendant, why you're excited about this position. It will keep you in practice. It will keep your interview skills lubricated and loose and ready to go when it's time to go. Because that is one thing we still don't know. We don't know when airlines are going to start training flight attendants again. We know for the majors that are going through huge changes right now as far as shrinking their fleet, which means they're going to be shrinking their workforce. I'm talking about Delta, American, United, Southwest, kind of specifically, but not necessarily exactly them. Those airlines will probably be a good while. I'm thinking 3 years maybe before we start to see training classes. But there will be new flight attendants trained, even possibly this year, definitely next year. There will be new flight attendants at some airlines trained. There will be flight attendant training classes within the next 12 months. So we're not looking at a 3 to 5 year plan to become a flight attendant. Now, to become a Delta flight attendant, maybe. But to become a flight attendant, no. There's going to be opportunity sooner than I think our feelings would want us to think. So another thing that happened this week that actually is on the positive side is that I wanted to make sure that I did mention is that SkyWest, which is a regional, a really, really great, strong regional, actually posted first quarter profits. I don't know because I haven't done all the research, but they may have been the only airline that did. I know that Southwest did not. This was their first time having a first quarter loss, and I think it might have been 10 years, I believe. Somebody who knows can maybe pop it in the comments if you know. But I believe it's 10 years that they have. This is the first time that they've had a first quarter loss. SkyWest had a first quarter profit. That means they actually made a little bit of money. So how does this happen? It could be so many different things. There are some airlines, a lot of airlines actually are kind of scrambling to go a little bit heavier into cargo, so that they're moving more cargo since they're not moving as many people. That is a way that the airlines are going to make money. I believe that this is correct. Someone can correct me if it's wrong, but I think Mesa even does some maintenance for some other carriers. And there's probably lots of airlines that do that. So that could be another way that an airline is making money right now. Maybe they are responsible. They're contracted out to do maintenance for another airline. So they're working on those planes, those cargo planes or something like that maybe they're working, that they're making some money. So the industry, one thing we really have to keep in mind is that every airline is different from every other airline. So the way that they make money, their marketing strategy, their profit and loss, bottom line, do they own their planes, how much they pay their flight attendants, like everything. There's so many different things that go into what makes this airline, how this airline makes money, and why this airline maybe is profitable, and why maybe this airline lost money, and then this airline will make money. There's just so many different things. So we cannot, I think I do get frustrated when we paint this broad brush across aviation and say, wow, if someone says, when do you think this is going to be over? When do you think they're going to be accepting applications again or hiring again? And it's like, it's going to be years. No, it's not. It's not going to be years before an airline has a flight attendant training class. It may be years before the airline you are dreaming of has a flight attendant training class, but we cannot paint this big broad brush and just say, no one's going to be hiring for years. It's going to be years. You better forget about that dream. Like, I see all sorts of kind of snarky stuff on Facebook. But that being said, that's pretty much industry updates and who's hiring. So now we're going to go and we're going to move on to our viewer question, our community question. Last week, if you watched last week's, or if you go back and watch it, last week's It's Morning Somewhere had 3 parts. It had kind of like community, it had industry updates and who's hiring, it had community question, and then we had a laser coaching session for interview skills at the end. I have decided to drop that last part from this show because I want to make laser coaching or interview skills easier to access. So I'm going to be adding another video. It probably won't be a live, but a video that makes it easier to search so that you can find it if you need help with this star format question or that, what would you do question is kind of separately. So we are changing up the format. It's only the second time I've done the show. It's probably not going to be the only time that I change the format or that I make a little change. So if you're waiting for that laser coaching, it will come later in the week. But it's time to talk about community questions. So today's community question is, I'm going to read it to you. So I got it. I actually got this Monday. Okay. And it says, American Airlines is rescinding CJOs, which is conditional job offers. I got my email a few minutes ago and I can't stop crying. Just giving you a heads up that a lot of aspiring flight attendants who were holding out hope for this summer or even 2021 have just had their hearts broken. We might need extra support in the group. I quit my teaching job in anticipation of going to training in April before training was canceled, and I'm beside myself. Your wisdom is much appreciated. That was not the only message that I got with those tones. It appears that American and both Southwest Airlines this week sent out emails or made phone calls basically rescinding job offers that they had offered. So that would be, these are not people in the middle of interview process. These are people who had actually done it. These are people who had actually accomplished it, had thought the hard part was over. They had done the interviews. Most of them, I imagine this was not their first interview, but they had done it. They had gotten hired with American. They had got hired with Southwest, 2 amazing dream airlines for a lot of people. And they were waiting and waiting. Some had quit their jobs. Some had, not renewed contracts, given up the lease on their house. So many different things, packed their bags, got their luggage. And then they find out that, okay, wait a little bit. Okay, I'll wait a little bit. And then this week they basically got dumped. They got broken up with by the airline. I know how that feels. I've had a training class canceled before and then lost my job offer. I've been fired by an airline. I've quit an airline that I still regret to this day. So I have had the feelings, I still have the feelings some days of grief. It's grief that surrounding this career, losing a career, losing a piece of a career, losing the next opportunity in your career. And so that's really what I wanted to talk about a little bit in this part, because she says your wisdom is needed. And if you saw my Facebook post yesterday, maybe I can put it down in the YouTube description, but I didn't have words for 2 days. I didn't have wisdom. I didn't have encouragement. I didn't have anything really to give because grief. But I was able to type out something that, that was definitely came from my heart that said, I've been there. I know. Don't quit. Hang in there. We can do this. I'll put it below in the description so you can read the whole thing. But today I want to talk about grief because there's a lot of different words. We can be disappointed. We can be frustrated. We can be mad. We can be sad. We can be heartbroken. But I feel like the word that best describes what you're feeling if you're in that situation, and it doesn't even have to be that your job offer was taken away. It could be that you didn't get to apply, or that you applied and you didn't get to the interview, or you made it to the first interview and you're not going to get to the second interview because everything's canceled. Grief. That's what we're dealing with right now, grief. And so I did a little bit of research on grief. I'm not an expert in grief or psychology or anything by any means, but I did a little bit of research on grief. So if this is new to you, this talking about grief, I just wanted to kind of go over some basic things and give you some tips, some things to remember as you go through grief. So first of all, there's 5 stages of grief. I think we kind of all know that. I knew that there were 5 stages of grief. I didn't know what the 5 stages were, though, until I looked on the internet. And basically, it's denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and then acceptance. The thing to know, though, that I thought was very, very interesting is even though there are 5 steps, grief is not linear, which means it doesn't go in order and it doesn't go from one to the other to the other to the other. So there's 5 stages, but you could do them in all different orders. You could go to one and then another. But another thing that I read that I thought was really interesting was that grief is not really an emotion. It's more of a process. I mean, definitely there's feelings that involve it, but it's not like, man, I feel sad today. Let me just dance it out. Man, I feel grief today. No, it's not that. It's more of a process that you're in, and you feel different things while you're going through the grieving process. Denial, which is the first one, although they don't go in order, but they're numbered just so you can keep track, I guess. The first one is denial, and that includes shock and disbelief. So, honestly, I feel like maybe I was in denial for a little while. Maybe I was, going with a little bit of disbelief as the industry started to change. As the industry continues to change, it's going to impact my family directly because my husband works for an airline. We're listening to all the calls, listening to the, all the, promises of hopefully not furloughing and all of that too. So maybe a little bit of denial and disbelief was on my part. I don't think that that's bad. I'm not going to apologize for it because I'm allowed to grieve like you're allowed to grieve. Another stage is anger. I definitely saw some anger in the Facebook group and even just around, I don't think that it was fair that the airline did this. I don't think that it was fair that they treated my friend this way. I'm mad at them because they were not upfront, because they could have held on. I'm mad at them because they canceled my friend's job offer and they could have just kept her in the pool. Anger. If you're feeling anger, that is part of grief. So let's make sure that we're identifying it correctly. As you're feeling that anger, be careful about what you're posting on social media, though. Okay. Journaling, writing it down, yelling, telling a friend, yes. Blasting the airline on social media is not going to serve you well in the future. Bargaining, which has guilt. Okay. This one I see a ton because if I had just applied sooner, then I would have had better training. I would have gotten the training class. If I had just nailed the interview the first time, I would have been already hired. If I had just started sooner, if I was just younger, it's just so many different things that go into the guilt aspect of grieving. We have to work through it, but you know what? Your time will come. This is not final. This is not when your job offer was rescinded or you didn't get your application in before they stopped hiring. That was not a final. That is not the end. This is, what is it? This is a semicolon, not a period. All right. So give yourself a break as far as feeling the guilt. This is also not your fault. This is a global pandemic caused by a virus. This is not even your fault in any way. Okay. The hard work that you've done, everything is still going to serve you when you move forward. When the opportunity presents itself, if you have already gotten a job offer from a major airline, let me tell you, first of all, that's hard to do. Second of all, that means you can freaking do it again. Okay. That was not a fluke. You will do it again. You will get it again. Do we want to do it again? No. Do we want to interview again? No. Do we want to have to? No. But you did it. The airline saw inside of you what they want for their flight attendants. And that is not going to change in 6 months, in 3 years, whenever you have the next opportunity. And then there's two more. Another one is depression. And that's the one where we're just crying and we're feeling heartbroken. And that's okay. It's part of grief. It's part of grief. And you maybe are crying today and then you're really pissed off at them tomorrow and then you're crying again because grief is not linear. That's okay. So the feeling sad, we don't need to suck it up. You don't need to get over it. You don't need to suck it up. You don't need to convince yourself that it didn't matter because it was just a job. You don't need to convince yourself that, you don't need to try to guilt yourself into not feeling sad by reminding yourself that at least you're not sick or at least you're not dying or, I lost my job, but at least I'm not dying. No. You can feel sad. It can be sad for you. And then acceptance is the last one. And that's where your hope comes back in. So acceptance is a stage of grief. Isn't that amazing? So you don't just go through the 4 yucky stages and then now grief is over. No. Acceptance and hope is actually part of grief. That is what's finishing it up. And that is what is putting a bow on it. Okay. So a couple of things that I really want you to know about grief is that it's not linear, which I've said several times, but I think that's very, very, very important because there's no such thing as regressing or moving backwards. Another thing is everyone's journey through grief is different. So, each one of us are going to feel differently. Each one of us are going to, move through the different stages differently at different timelines in different order and different. Some of us are going to be sad for longer. Some of us are going to be angry for longer. Everyone's journey is different and that's okay. There's no time frame. Okay. There's no time limit on grief. It's not like this is just a job. So you only need to be sad about it for 30 minutes or whatever. There's no time limit. And then the last thing that I want to make sure that everyone knows is that there is no wrong way to grieve. The way that you are feeling is the way you're feeling. Now, we don't want to stay in despair, though, and we don't want to stay sad, and we don't want to stay angry, and we don't want to feel guilty, and we don't want to stay in denial. I think journaling is a really, 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 really powerful tool as far as moving through your feelings. And journaling is not the same thing as keeping a diary. Journaling is writing down your feelings. It's also writing down, thinking about the way you want your life to look. That can help stir up that belief. Picturing yourself or writing about yourself. How are you going to feel when you do get to graduate from flight attendant training? When you do make it to that goal that you're working towards. I think that is something that's very, very powerful. I have been journaling a lot more recently. I have really added that in to my my self-care, basically, my self-care practices, journaling, thinking about how I want my life to look, thinking about how it's going to look when all of this is over, when I'm able to meet my goals again. Also, the way that I'm feeling. Today's journal prompt was, I don't remember it. It was something like the prompt that I had today was, when faced with anxiety, I respond. And then the point of it was to sort of think of some ways that you will respond to anxiety before you're feeling anxious. So these are things I'm going to do. This is how I want to respond to anxiety. This is how I want to feel when I'm faced with an anxious situation, a situation that causes anxiety. And it allows you to just sort of work through some of those emotions before you're even faced with it. So I would really encourage you to try journaling. There's no wrong way to do it. You can do it on just like scrap paper and throw it away even if you want. But I think writing down your thoughts is a great way to move through grief. That being said, that's all that I have today. This is a shorter one. It's a heavier one. If you need help, more help, then my Facebook group can offer you, which is more like assistance. If you really, really need help, there are other resources out there that are more skilled at that than me. I definitely encourage everyone to join the Facebook group Depart from Depression and Therapy. I'll link to them in the description. Therapy is spelled with the word air really big in the middle. And Depart from Depression. Those groups are definitely places to continue to work through your grief. There are places where you will find support. They're safe places where you can share your different feelings. Not that you can't share them in Flight Attendant Career Connection, but Flight Attendant Career Connection does have a little bit less of a feely feel to it. Whereas these other two groups definitely have a community feeling where it is a safe space. It has a lot of current flight attendants. So if you are a current flight attendant facing furlough, that is another place that you can share. I don't think I have any comments today from the live, so that's okay. This wasn't really a fun, interactive kind of session today, but I hope that there's something that I said that encourages you, that sparks some hope, that maybe gives you permission to feel the way that you're feeling. If you needed permission to grieve a job, here's your permission. You can grieve your job. Anytime. Your grief is not something that is ever right or wrong. So if you're feeling grief, then that is right for you. So you have permission to feel it. So I'm here for you. If you need anything, please know that you're definitely my thoughts and prayers, especially if you had your job offer rescinded this week or moving forward if you have it rescinded, wherever. Job offer rescissions, is that a word? It's definitely something that's weighing on me and definitely my thoughts. So don't give up. This isn't the end of the story. It's okay that it's not okay right now. It will be okay. But it's not okay right now, and that's all right. But I will see you next week, next Wednesday. It's morning somewhere. Hopefully we get some good news this week. Talk to you later. I love you. Bye.